Yeah, we did have one more question. So from Ben, he said he enjoyed all 9 episodes.
Aw, Ben.
Ben's our guy. But he said, I'd like to know more about how you guys are structuring your business lives. That's a very big, broad, entire podcast episode, but maybe we give a little recap on kind of what we do and kind of how you do a general structure on it. And then if someone likes what they hear or want to know more detail and specific of something, then we can kind of rip into that.
Yeah, I guess the challenges and time management for dummies. I told Tanner we should bring that up.
Got to read that real quick.
I mean, I guess I would say I'm probably more engaged than you are in day-to-day residential sales anymore, right?
Yep.
Like you've kind of stepped back from that. So my challenge is running a sales business, a residential resale, traditional real estate business while doing these things on the side. The way I've managed to do it is because I view them very, very similar. I feel like I'm doing the exact same thing, just one I'm doing for clients and then one I'm doing it for me. I'm in and out of properties all day.
Yeah.
So I'm in and out of rentals all day.
Yep.
I'm assessing values over here. I'm assessing values over there. So just from a focus standpoint or from an expertise standpoint or whatever, I feel like it's kind of the same thing. Mm-hmm. Now, getting into my time management is a little bit trickier because I think I've been pretty open here in the past saying that I've struggled with that and trying to pivot my attention towards what really matters, which is getting that property off the ground that I'm building, which I'm 6 to 8 months behind purely because of my own doing. The market's been crazy here. I've been stretched thin, so I haven't been able to focus on that.
Yep.
So how do I balance it? I'm trying to, right now I'm probably 80% sales still and 20% property management, which is foolhardy and shouldn't be. It just happens that I'll do property management for, as much as most people do a full-time job, and then I just work a lot of hours in my main lane as well at the same time.
Yeah,
but you kind of have stepped back a little bit more. How are you managing? Because you run a few businesses.
Yeah, well, so just to quickly recap on yours. So you structure, your main business is being a real estate agent, and you kind of structure things around that. Yeah. You're transitioning a little bit into the development side in the sense that, not a little bit, that you have lots of land, lots to build, lots to do, but it's still primarily your time is focused on being a real estate agent.
Yep.
And then it's becoming kind of almost an after hours and side thing to run the properties and work through that, which is, I think, very common for a lot of agents. And everyone takes it to a different level. Again, you're taking it to a level that I think will ultimately become your development will become the main
thing. Yep.
So yeah, mine's a little bit different. So I came into this already having a little bit of business stuff going on. So I started actually with a contracting company before I ever got my license. So I had a contracting restoration business. So we do work for insurance companies. So if you have a fire, flood, mold, any of those kinds of things. So that's where I started with like a formalized business. I had a bunch of little businesses. I talk about that in episode 1 on how I got started. Those, like, the progression was made and I just dropped those businesses off. They were never big enough to really sell for anything. They were more just personal businesses. The time it became like a real business is when I got into the contracting side of things. At that time, I was already flipping houses and had some rentals. Again, that was just a very small business. It was me running it myself. I was very hands-on. I was doing a lot of the stuff myself. So things weren't too crazy. I handled everything on my own. Once I started the contracting company, I was still actually in university at that point. It was a franchise. I bought it. They had so many requirements and rules. That's when I had to build out and get administrative and project manager and have other people involved.
Kind of a blessing in disguise when you think about it. Think of what you learned having been required to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was. I don't like discredit the franchise. They taught me a lot about business and things that you should do and best practices and how to get things in place and systems. And so it did that for me. So by doing that, I realized that, hey, look, like I got to the point where there was job sites I'd never been to, and we went through the whole project. We did it. I got a check at the end. Customer was happy, and I never had to be there. And I don't want to say I got high on that, but I kind of did. And I was like, you know what, this is what I always wanted. Like, so then when I got my real estate license, I did that as like kind of a means to buy more real estate and to kind of fill my time, because as a contracting company, I don't physically need to be there. So I did. I was fortunate with the timing, and it grew really big. So not really big. It's not nearly as big as Chandler, but like for me, it was great. But so I built that up, and it took over a big portion of my time. But honestly, all I did was I structured. So like that was my priority, is selling homes and rentals. And then on the side, I had my contracting company, and I had my own property purchases. Now, in the last year, I've made a big shift in the sense that being a residential agent, I've kind of put that on the back burner. I still proudly will say I'm a top producer, but I'm not as prioritized on that, in the sense that I've tried to take control of it. I'm a little bit more choosy on who my clients are, I have other agents that I will pass portions of my deals to, and that's giving me more time to work on my rentals. And that's how in the last 2 years I've gone from 5 units to 85 or whatever it is exactly now units, is because I ended up shifting my focus a lot, just because it was something that maybe I enjoyed more and I liked having a bit more control over. And so the way I kind of structure my day to day is I've put priority on growing that business while still running the real estate agent business. So I don't put a ton of priority on growing that one. And I'm actually transitioning now into commercial. So I'd like to reduce my end count and go to more, I guess, high number ends, in the sense of like, okay,
high yield, low numbers,
ends. Yeah. So it's a $100 million building versus doing $100 million in houses. And it's not purely because of money. I like the challenge. I like to change things up. I'm very much a person who changes it. So now I structure myself that my priority, my number one business is my real estate that I physically own, my developments, those things. Then I also have the commercial agent and the residential side. And then the contracting still kind of sits on the side. Unfortunately, that business, I realized as I went on, and this is something we talked about last time, is what my objective was in life, monetary and freedom-wise. Contracting is a very intensive business that takes a lot of time. And the reward at the end is good, but it didn't meet the requirements of what I needed to in the timeline that I needed to. Yeah. Right? So I found that there was other ways that I could operate. And so I've allowed myself, and I'm big on hiring people. So like I hired somebody to do my property management, hired someone to do the project management, hired administrators, hired assistants. And that's allowed me to kind of have some more free time and still be able to, I say, enjoy myself, because that's what I like to do, is have my free time. So I've structured it a little bit different, where I'm constantly trying to step back. I'm always like, I go in, do it, figure it out, then put somebody in that place. Whether that's writing a handbook and putting someone in that place or doing those kinds of things, I want to be able to be traveling somewhere and just check in and make sure that the steps are still being followed.
Yeah, and I think part of presumably why someone would ask this question is because maybe they're toying with the idea of changing from, okay, I've got this 9 to 5, right? And until you replace that income, you kind of need that 9 to 5.
100%.
You need it to qualify for mortgages. You need it to keep your lights on. You need it to provide for the people around you that you're responsible for. You need that. The question is, how do you then balance that time with going out and, say, managing even 10 units? Right? Like if you are spread thin, managing even 10 units can be difficult. The bigger issue I find is, because people all the time be like, hey, man, like, you know, if you ever come, you're a good agent. When you come across a 15-unit building, just send it my way, man. I'll buy it. It's like, yeah, you and everyone else. Yeah. Right? Like, how many times does someone come and say, hey, if you get a good deal on a 15-unit.
Every day. You
know, and we're going to say, well, if it's a good deal on a 15-unit, I'll probably buy it. But a lot of that stuff trades hands very privately.
Big time.
So if you really want to switch into acquiring these at some point, you know, you almost have to make that a fuller time job.
Bit of a leap.
You have to make that leap, or at least realize that you are spending all of your off time pursuing those things, because you may have to, you know this, you might have to talk to 15 sellers before you even get one who's maybe interested in selling.
100%.
And then that might take 2 years. So what are you going to do? Sit there and do nothing for 2 years, have no income? No, that means you've got to go out, instead of talking to 15, 20, 30 sellers, you got to talk to 60 and 100 and come back to them and, you know, spread the word out to other people like, hey, if you have anything in this, that becomes a full-time job at some point. The challenge people have is to say, okay, I want to do this. Like, well, if you're not putting in the extra hours of due diligence to find those deals, it's going to be hard to grow. I even struggle with this myself. I'm so committed to doing one thing that I don't have as much time to go out there and shake the trees and find other opportunities. I've got a nice full plate and for the next 10 years from a development perspective, but would I love to come across more deals all the time? Absolutely.
Those big 8 units, 6 units?
Wow, just taking shots here now. No, but you know, there's somewhere out there, there's a 20-unit building that someone would sell.
Yes.
Right. Somewhere.
And it's a deal.
And it's a solid deal and so on and so forth. But do I have the time this evening to do it? No, I got to write an offer and I got to do this. So what you've done well, I think, is have stepped back from that, taken the short-term loss. We talked about this in an episode. Take the short-term loss with the hope of building something else. For people who are not in a position to do that yet, you have to work long hours. I don't know that there's a solution to it beyond that. Yeah.
There's no replacement for working your butt off, which sounds cliche. Everyone says that there's no replacement for hard work, and that's really true. I found that out. We all found that out the hard way.
The secret is there is no secret.
The secret is there's no secret. I think I have a lot of my colleagues that are working full-time jobs that want to get out of the full-time job and run their own kind of gig. And the thing I push them a lot is, exactly. You need to kind of commit to just working like a dog, and you can't You can't do everything. You can't say, okay, I'm going to now quit my full-time job, start this awesome business, and then live like I'm just living it up. Like, unfortunately, that those things can't all go together. But I say to a lot of people, like you're saying, is so like, hey, I have one colleague right now who's very much in that position. And I'm like, okay, like you have enough money to buy 1 or 2 small properties. Let's be very cognizant of where we buy them. Let's get them as Airbnbs. And I bet you off of those 2, you will net probably almost close to what you're taking home now. And you'll be a little bit less, but it will allow you then to pack out of your job, and now you're full time, and now you can delve in super hard. You can go full time door knocking, and you can make that switch. And you're never going to do that until you just have to bite the bullet and do it. And so
you have to remove the safety net at some point.
And it's never just simple. It's never like, hey, you just do this, and now you're able to do that. Otherwise, everybody would just do it, right? You have to lose a few hairs. I
think also you need to profile engineer the person that does what you want to be doing. Right? In the sense of like, okay, the person that I want to be in the life that I want to have for the next little bit, what amount do I need to live off of? And what does that person live in? Right? Like, you've made a practical decision to rent a property downtown for all kinds of reasons. Right? Maybe counterintuitive. Some people are like, well, why wouldn't you buy a house and blah, blah. Like, we'll unpack that in another episode. But, I look at, okay, if I was starting fresh, I could live lean and mean. Like, what would be the first thing that I would do? Well, maybe I would have bought a place and lived in the cheap basement apartment, rented the thing out for a lot or Airbnb above, right? That's the first thing I would have done. Then I would have figured out how many other, be it Airbnbs or rentals, would I need to get there, and how lean could I make my lifestyle? Like, is $50K the goal that I would need to hit to be able to stop working my other job, live as this individual with these properties to do that? You have to profile, like engineer a profile of the person that would be that one step ahead of you in terms of quitting their job and being able to do this. And then from there, profile engineer the next person. Like, okay, now I want a lifestyle of $150,000 a year. What does that person look like, and what do they do? And then draw out that profile and execute on that. And that's what things people do kind of subconsciously, but that's what you're actually doing. It's emulation, it's planning, it's goal setting. But think of the person that you want to be. How do they work? What do they do? Does that person wake up at 11 or does that person wake up at 6:30?
Big time.
Right? And that's an oversimplification, but I think that's at least a good starting point.
When I was broke, I had rich habits.